Now that I don't have that bum weighing me down, it's really freed up my time to kick back and catch up on some of the old classics I've been missing all this time. And seeing as you're still here, I guess that means you're along for the ride. So let me tell you about a little company called Bungie. Probably haven't heard of them. They were this company that made a lot of really cool games for the Mac back in the 90s. You know, gems like Gaga, Operation Desert Storm, Oni, and most notably, Pathways into Darkness. Oh, and also Marathon a few years later.
Okay.
DICE, or Digital Illusions as they were known once upon a time, is one of those companies I've always had a somewhat of a deep infatuation with, and it's hard to really explain why. I mean, on paper, DICE is one of the many subsidiaries of Electronic Arts. They've been acquired since about 2006, and have made mostly shooter titles and the occasional racing game, back when those were big in the market. But even before then, it was mostly pinball and unimpressive Amiga games. In terms of their library, of all the things they've ever made, shooters and particularly the Battlefield games make up their popularity. I mean, the Frostbite engine and the destruction found in the Battlefield games is more or less what made the company a household name, with Bad Company 1 and 2 in particular being some of the most impressive games at the time and even today with this tech. They'd go on to make a dozen more Battlefields, some of which were good, a few of which were real stinkers, and one of which is a kind of bizarre cops and robbers game a lot of people never really played and has a weird campaign where everyone on the force is just a bit racist towards you and you commit a bunch of felonies in the pursuit of justice. So, more or less not too bad a depiction of cops, I guess. But aside from all that, most people don't really have much to say about Hardline because, honestly, there's not that much here. It's just sort of, alright. Aside from that, though, they've done the new Battlefront games, a Medal of Honor game that's sort of like if Call of Duty was a little more boring. And there was that one time where they also remade Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and, completely changed the style and feel of it. I guess people somewhat like this game now, but I always kinda hated this shit. It's simply lacking in any amount of vibe or swag. It's like a lifeless corpse being paraded around, but I guess the controls are good now.
Perfect!
Oh, and there is one more little thing in their library, of course. You might have heard of it. A breakout title that felt like a fresh breath of air in an industry that was, at the time, polluted with first-person shooters that all felt more or less the same. A little thing by the name of Mirror's Edge. Fuck. When did I get a beanbag chair? 1,000-word script. Holy shit, he did it. And the timeline. He actually fucking did it. See, Daniel? I'm not such a bad guy, am I? I just wanted to see you flourish and stop holding yourself back. I'm sorry I doubted you. I just... Tell me what I need to do next. Don't worry, Daniel. It's all water under the bridge now. Everything's gonna be fine. Babidi is a game that is incredibly simple, yet fascinates me, made by a duo of developers called the Lemaitre Bros. Together, they would make a series of smaller games that would release on itch.io. Mostly small little projects that took a few minutes to play, but were generally pretty fun and packed with personality. Eventually, they would release their first larger title with Babidi, a game that is pretty simple, with the only goal being to escape from a town of the same name. And I kind of love this thing for one reason or another. Sitting here with about a runtime of an hour or so, this simple little game really managed to hold my attention and draw me into the world it had to offer. This strange unreality, a world that seems almost familiar, yet still feels completely alien, with minimal interactions and what do exist being fairly, off-putting. It creates this atmosphere that really reminds me of the Pathologic games in particular. The sort of very dry and blunt way people speak to each other about what has become an everyday event. That sort of soul-crushing despair you can only get from somewhere in Eastern Europe. Northern Journey also has a similar sort of energy. It's part of why I loved it enough to make a video about it earlier in the season. You could say I've always had a deep love of that particular energy. It's a certain spice I just can't help but falling in love with. In terms of its gameplay, what's on offer here is pretty simple. In fact, it's almost non-existent. You go around, you escape the town, you pick up items that help you along the way, and you try to get out as fast as possible. In fact, there's even a sort of time trial mode you can do to try and get the fastest time escaping the town, which is a lot of fun, considering there's not that much on offer here. Yet, still, I find myself kind of loving this thing. I don't know, it's just a lot of fun to navigate and smash yourself around with a baseball bat and fling yourself across the map. There's just a lot of fun things here. I mean, the moment I found out a leaf blower could be used to make me kind of float up in the air, I was having a grand old time, if I'm honest with you. That's about the best I can put it. There's just a lot of creativity on offer here, and it just sort of feels fun to move forward, no matter how you're doing it. And while it doesn't have a deep narrative or a particularly engaging story or characters to interact with, it's just a lot of fun to navigate this world. It's basically held up entirely on vibes and feelings, you know? And for me at least, I'm fine with that. I'm a pretty simple guy in that regard, and honestly, if you manage to give me a vibe and general feeling of unease, I'm pretty on board for the most part, as long as you don't break that immersion. And for me, this game never really did. Instead, I found myself having a lot of fun swimming in its little murky pond that it found itself in. It's a great grand old time, and also it's pretty goddamn cheap, so, you know, take that as you will, and maybe give it a try. Babidi represents a type of game that I adore but never really get a chance to talk about on this channel. One that's got about 2 hours of playtime in it at most, and gives you a satisfying bite of a tasty world created by somebody else. The type of thing that isn't necessarily inherently replayable or even worth spending money on in the first place, but at the same time offer something unique that you won't find elsewhere. These games are particularly popular on sites like itch.io, smaller, more focused experiences that don't really bother worrying about runtime or conventional game design. This is how art thrives. No rules, no strict set path, just artists making whatever they want without a care for a strict limited design sense that weighs down the industry. It's the perfect hub for first-time developers, small game jam products, fan games, or just weird experimental prototypes that don't quite have a place to fit elsewhere. Steam's all well and good, but it's a bit limited in what it can offer developers in terms of actually uploading a game to its storefront. It's a process that, believe it or not, does actually require some upfront cost, and with any product that's under 2 hours, there's a chance that a significant amount of the audience will refund it the moment they finish it. On top of that, Steam helps harbor a lot more of a toxic relationship with developers. The people playing a game on it expect a certain standard, and if something falls short of that standard, then they don't really hesitate to write a poor review and cause a big fuss. Meanwhile, I've found that itch.io harbors a much more forgiving and much more understanding community. Partly because a lot of the people who scavenge it for cool finds are a lot more open-minded and know what to expect because they themselves have an interest in game development. The environment it creates is one of collaborative spirit and genuine awe, and wonder at finding the occasional hidden gem, instead of a cavalcade of people that only view video games as a product. A worldview that I find particularly abhorrent and limited. Buckshot Roulette is the kind of standout itch.io story you hope for. A hidden gem that gets brought into the light and brings a promising new developer into the spotlight. Right off the bat, this thing is dripping in style and purpose, a perfected hit of dopamine directly into the player's veins that few things can ever manage to truly capture. Each round could be your last, each bet could be for naught, yet you just can't help but keep going, risking it all in a bid for not just a pile of cash, but a feeling of success. This loop only becomes better with the addition of the Endless mode added after the Steam release, one where every few rounds you're asked if you want to tap out and take your money, or keep going and doubling it. It's exhilarating, a feeling that's really hard to get anywhere else. It'll leave you going all or nothing, desperate for luck to take the wheel and guide you to victory. Hard, but not impossible. Tough, but fulfilling. Even if at the end of the day, it's all just for some big final score. Of course, all of this is still helped by the fact that the developer is still pretty active and does occasionally update the game to add new little things here and there. Plus, the community has more or less taken over at this point. In fact, there's an entire multiplayer mod for this thing that exists that is, well, pretty cool, and if the developer can get working in any official capacity, would be pretty awesome to see one day. Still though, the grit, the style, the vibe, it's all just something you can't get anywhere else. A feel of adrenaline that is pumping in your veins that is unmatched. Or, well, almost unmatched. Post-Void is a run-and-gun shooter with a simple premise. Get to the end of every level. The issue? Oh, well, every second you waste, your timer ticks down. The only way to keep it going is to kill. The action here is intense. Beyond intense, really. To call this thing a twitch shooter doesn't even really do it justice. You're riding on a hair's edge through each and every run. One wrong move, one missed shot, everything is decided in milliseconds, leaving you not even a moment to catch your breath. It's pulse-pounding, a pure shot of adrenaline that is genuinely unmatched to me still in video games. Whenever I've described this game to others, I've always said it's the video game equivalent to a shot of adrenaline straight to the heart. Your mind goes empty, your body acts on impulse. You give in and just lose yourself in the flow, barely even remembering to take a breath between floors. It's truly exhilarating. The kind of white-knuckle excitement you can only get from a loaded .45 and a night out on the town. Or when playing something like the masterpieces that are the two Hotline Miami games, or Cruelty Squad, or maybe even Ready or Not if you're nasty. If you haven't caught on by now, I love good gunplay. I'm an avid fan of the original Dooms, of run-and-gun mayhem. I like a boomstick that causes big damage and chunks enemies. I like the satisfaction of watching a corpse hit the floor with a well-placed shot. That twitchy feeling of every moment around any given corner possibly being your last. So, of course, when it comes to itch, there's more than enough bullets to go around. One of my particular favorites, though, is a demo for an upcoming game called Pigface, something I came across while browsing Twitter, or X if you're annoying and probably own a ticking time bomb of a vehicle. Pigface is basically everything I could ever want. A bit of Saw crossed with Condemned and Manhunt, crossed with fast-paced, satisfying gunplay and plenty of options for firepower, each of which feels properly weighted. This is one to keep your eyes on for sure, folks. When it releases, I have a pretty damn good feeling I'll end up booting it up just to blow off some steam whenever I want to kill 30 minutes. I highly recommend the demo if you get the chance. The developer also does seem very nice and keeps this thing updated regularly, and man, I'm just really excited for this upcoming project whenever the hell it comes out. In fact, just check out itch.io in general, to be honest. There's such a huge amount of demos and cheap dollar gems that provide much more fulfilling and interesting experiences than anything on the market right now anyway. Why spend $70 on some piece of shit live service that might die in a year or two, when you can spend a total of $3.99 or, God forbid, less than $5 on something that actually fills you with joy, instead of a deep emotional void that can't be filled no matter how many games you try to toss into the pile. In the occasional sound of gunfire in the distance and the troops making their snide remarks about the other side, it creates a really believable and honestly somewhat comfy environment when you aren't taking fire and blowing a hole through the enemy side. I don't know, man, it's weird to call a war zone comfy, but this game, it just, I don't know, it puts me into a headspace, alright? Fuck. God, my fucking head. I think something's really fucking wrong with me. I woke up today in the woods behind my house. There was a deer next to me. It had been like fucking torn open, man. It was fucking covered in its gore. I don't know how I got there. I don't know. My fucking head all morning. Ever since I woke up, my nose has been bleeding like fucking crazy. Fuck, I don't think the meds are working. It's getting worse. Why won't you pick up? Please. I don't know what else to do besides send another one of these fucking vlogs. Takao, please. I need you right now. I need somebody. I really need somebody. What's happening to me? Okay, so, it's 2008. The height of new first-person shooters is well underway, and the rise of competitive multiplayer gaming is just really kicking off into full gear. It's one of the best years for games that exist. I'm talking Fallout 3, Smash Bros. Brawl, Left 4 Dead, Gears of War 2, Far Cry 2, MGS 4, GTA 4, DMC 4, if you're nasty. The list goes on. It was a really packed year for excellent titles, and in the midst of it all, a completely out-of-left-field first-person parkour game by the name of Mirror's Edge dropped to, honestly, pretty rave reviews, remarkably, with pretty much everyone finding it incredibly charming more or less right out of the gate. Make no mistake, it might not have been Battlefield numbers, but Mirror's Edge did sell well, and it did make an impact. It just, unfortunately, also released in the exact same year as both a dozen amazing bangers that would go on to be incredibly well regarded, and, oh, look, it's that thing EA does from time to time where they release two fucking major titles in the exact same year. Well, at least it's not one of the best-selling and well-regarded entry in DICE's library releasing next to their new IP. Oh, wait, hang on here, I'm getting some new... Ah, fuck! Mirror's Edge was a unique spin on things at the time, with it being heavily inspired by parkour and free running, which had been growing in popularity at the point in time that it came out. The team wanted to make a new IP, something that would stand out. And since the first-person shooter space had become so bloated at the time, it felt like their efforts would be better spent focusing on movement, physics, and the environments of their game rather than the combat. Thus, Mirror's Edge, as we know it, would be born out of this mindset. Instead of going guns blazing into a war zone, the player would instead be racing across the rooftops of a modern city of glass, filled with slick architecture, a unique art direction, and bright saturated colors, all while trying to avoid police and getting the best possible time on each and every level. What combat did exist was purposefully pretty simple and easy to avoid, though it still had just enough to it that it wouldn't break up the flow of levels too much, though some would argue having any at all was a big step in the wrong direction, but we'll get to that. All of this is to say, though, that Mirror's Edge and the team behind it definitely stuck the landing on its release, and it did well to diversify the portfolio of DICE games. They just, unfortunately, also work on, one of the biggest shooter franchises of all time, so yeah, Mirror's Edge was definitely on the back burner a bit after that. At the end of the day, what we got with Mirror's Edge was perfect in my eyes. A little 8 to 10 hour game that's not particularly long, has highly replayable levels, and even has a race mode which functions as a kind of time trial where you can compete against other players and your friends for the best possible time on any given stage. That's a pretty tight little package, even if people at the time didn't think so. On top of that though, perhaps as a treat just for me personally, there's also all this art and bits of development which I adore. This shit rocks. It used to exist to pad out smaller games in this era, but it feels like in the new generations, shit is bloated to hell more or less to the point where it has faded away entirely, which I think is really sad. I love seeing the behind-the-scenes art. I like seeing, how a game was made. That stuff's really neat to me, so to see it just kind of fade away really, it sucks, man. I don't really like it, and that's all. Anyway, Mirror's Edge is one of those games that, while short and while not doing a whole lot, does exactly what it needs to do very well. There's a reason it's stuck in the minds of so many people even to this day. It's got amazing style with a gameplay loop that, honestly, is kind of incredible nobody else has been able to replicate up until recently. I'd probably say Ghost Runner is about the closest follow-up, or maybe Titanfall 2 with its movement mechanics, but both of those put way more emphasis on actual combat and don't have nearly as interesting of a unique style in my opinion. Though, I do think Ghost Runner is fucking rad, man. Mirror's Edge, though, in its simplicity and perhaps understated design, is something really special. Forgoing a HUD entirely for the runner vision, which provides that unique and striking red outline on the preferred player path, is a great idea. One that makes the game instantly recognizable and honestly, where removing it makes it look really, really weird. It also really helps that you can toggle it off if you really want to for some reason, along with the reticle, which I much prefer. This game, with as little UI as possible, is stunning. Like, genuinely for a time, this was one of the most immersive and gorgeous looking games of its time, and honestly, it still holds up pretty goddamn well. Though the humans look a bit, well, it wasn't exactly DICE's priority here, let's say. I've talked about the gameplay and the environment, but this thing does have a story. It's just, you know, it's alright. Honestly, it's not bad, and it's fairly gripping to me when you're locked into it the entire time, but I just found myself wanting to talk less and run more. That's not to say I disliked it. I honestly think the story in both this and its sequel are pretty good, all things considered, as much as people might disagree with me there, but they also really only serve to get you from location to location. I will say, one thing I particularly appreciate with Mirror's Edge though is its cutscenes being this fun little 2D style. It's just another one of those things that make it stand out, and honestly, I much prefer this to when they try and do things in-game. It's significantly more fun to watch a conversation happen in an animation where all of Faith's little habits and oddities can be shown and put on display than just staring at somebody as they talk to you in an office building or a rooftop or whatever. I just can't bring myself to care, man. I really, you know, this guy's dead, sure, but it's not my problem. I just want to run on the roof. Still though, the story is good enough that I return back to it often. Really, the whole game is just sort of this relaxing blanket I put on from time to time when I feel like revisiting an era that I long since miss. It's such a simple and straightforward game that it really feels like it'd be almost impossible to make today. And if its sequel is anything to go on, they'd probably just try and stuff a bunch of junk into it that overcomplicates it to a degree that we don't really need. For a fairly cheap price, you can bet your ass it's worth it picking up even today. I'd bet just about anything you'd probably enjoy it. Even if you've seen somebody else play it, it just feels good to play yourself. Just be careful, because once you start running, you'll never want to stop. What's happening to me? You already know what's happening, Daniel. But I don't want this. I don't want this anymore. It doesn't really matter what you want, Daniel. It hasn't for a long time now. I don't want to change. I don't want to be someone else. I'm scared. I know. Should be this way. be somewhere. Oh, there we are. Oh. Where'd you put it? Let's see. Oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah. Now we'll really have some fun. I remember that time we spent together that one summer, playing games in my room while my parents were out. We just ordered a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and some pizza from Little Caesars, pepperoni, and mushrooms. Ahead of us, we had a stack of games rented from Blockbuster for all our systems. The weekend was ours. The world was ours. What I'd give to do it all again. One of the first games that ever really stood out to me in my younger years was Halo. For years, I'd been a huge fan of the writings of sci-fi authors like Harlan Ellison, Ray Bradbury, Frank Herbert. I used to scavenge the local library for pretty much anything sci-fi related I could find. I used to pick books based on their covers and just lose myself in a world of imagination. I used to read sci-fi magazines all the time when I was a kid because, well, it was the only thing I had. For most of my early teens, I wasn't allowed to play much video games. I didn't have a console of my own, and what few times I did get to play it would be in my father's basement at his new place he had with his new girlfriend at the time. I didn't really think of games as anything other than toys, with what few games I had played lacking any real story or even much in the way of spectacle. That is, until I saw Halo. The first time I watched somebody play Halo was after I'd moved with my mom from the city to a much smaller trailer park. It wasn't a bad place, but it wasn't exactly a good one either. Anyway, when I first moved there was this person, a local neighborhood kid by the name of Jordan. We got to talking, and eventually he invited me over to talk about this new game he had on his Xbox, a game called Halo. I remember watching in awe as the story unfolded in front of me. This sci-fi epic that I had only ever really read about, not just playing out like a movie in front of me, but waiting for my input. It's hard to explain that feeling now. I mean, I'm sure people have all felt something similar, the moment of awe when you feel something you thought impossible for the first time. The open world in Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild were some of the more recent titles to really truly inspire this in people. But for me, back then, seeing the Halo ring and getting to drive around it in these expansive open areas, often with hidden areas and side content you could easily drive by, well, it was just amazing to me. Something I just hadn't even thought about before. Top that all off with gameplay I adore, a story and world that feels genuinely impressive for the time, and the amount of backstory it had that felt pre-established, and, last but not least, the amazing musical genius of Marty O'Donnell is kind of actually a fucking weirdo Republican conspiracy guy that feels like he fell down the Q hole a little too hard now, so I really don't want to have to give him credit here, but the soundtrack to Halo is a fucking banger, we all know that, right? What do you want from me? Marty could cook back when his brain used to fucking work, just maybe don't let him near a microphone in the modern day, okay? It's thanks to all of these aspects, though, and especially the stunning musical numbers, that Halo is able to get away with a lot, while actually only offering a very limited amount of possible options. I didn't know it at the time, and as a kid I was blown away by it, but its open world is an illusion. Just a very impressive one. In a way, this has kind of always been the method with the Halo games. It's just like the gaming version of an epic, something like Lord of the Rings or the Witcher books. Just, you know, on screen with pretty colors and cool aliens, with a lot of cool shit happening off screen, or at least so you're told. I adore this game. I really do. There's just some old-fashioned magic about it that I feel every time I start its campaign again. It's truly one of the best to ever do it, and it really holds up and does a lot with its somewhat, well, I wouldn't say limited budget, but it does a lot with very little, let's just say. I dare to say that Halo 1 is probably the reason I love video games. It was the reason I ended up taking a liking to video games and further expanded on that as I was gifted my dad's PlayStation 1 and 2 shortly after, which kept me entertained for a while playing JRPGs and all sorts of other titles that those game systems had. Man, I love the PS2, that system is phenomenal. A+. But back then, all I wanted to really do was play Halo 2. I followed it pretty much up until release, getting particularly invested in the I Love Bees campaign. For those who don't know or were too young to remember, I shudder at the thought. In 2004, the second Halo 2 trailer was released, which, even though I didn't have a system I could play it on, I was closely following and excited for, vexed almost. At the end of the trailer, though, there was a brief flash of a website, one that was called ilovebees.com. When you would visit the site, of course, something was immediately off. It was hacked, according to the webmaster of the site, and a page that was previously just related to beekeeping was now covered in scrawls of text and fragments of thoughts. The webmaster of the site, a woman named Dana, made a blog stating that something had gone wrong with the site and that it had been hacked. This, in reality, was the starting gun in what would be a pretty damn influential piece of viral marketing by a group called 42 Entertainment. The site ilovebees.com would contain audio files with gibberish and text with more of the same, and most intriguingly, there was a countdown timer which upon hitting 0 would lead to the next stage of the game, with the second time it hit 0 being when a list of coordinates were released, all leading to certain payphones across America. Finally, a third timer started, this one being for a time when each of these phones would ring, prompting players across the states to coordinate and play along with the ARG to achieve the next stage. This was honestly kind of fucking awesome. I loved this whole marketing campaign, and it was the first real time I really found out what an ARG was, and obviously, to some degree, that had to do with me making this channel in the first place, and well, I've dropped a lot of those elements, and well, I don't really talk about that stuff anymore because, it just makes me uncomfortable. I did really find myself liking this campaign, and I do find myself liking, to some degree, the concept of an online internet game. It's just, you know, it's a lot to handle, alright? But, unfortunately, all I could really do during this time was watch on the sidelines, because, well, I didn't have an Xbox, and I wasn't going to be able to get one anytime soon. It just wasn't something my family could afford, so all I could do was watch trailers on repeat again and again and again, and sort of hope and wish. I imagined what Halo 2 would be long before I ever actually got a chance to play it. Because of this, I originally kind of missed out on the era of Halo 2 multiplayer. I only ever really caught the tail end of it thanks to the backwards compatibility of my 360 that I eventually managed to save up and buy, with most of my time instead being spent in the heyday of good old Master Chief's third big day out. That's not to say I didn't enjoy 1 and 2. I enjoyed them a lot. They were very formative games for me in a lot of ways. It's just that, while I enjoyed the stories, I didn't have much in the way of reliable internet for a while, and in fact, the only time I really ended up playing them was when I was over at my friend's house anyway. Back at home, we still had dial-up internet, which meant online matchmaking wasn't really a reality for me, and if I did manage to play it, there was a good chance I would get disconnected due to my internet speed or just because somebody decided to call the house. And all of this is if I was lucky enough to even get the chance to play the dang thing in the first place in the living room, since my mom would constantly protest violent video games at the time. I spent a lot of time in my youth playing Viva Pinata because it was one of the few games that was actually rated E for everyone. By the time the third game rolled around, though, we had an internet upgrade and I was a little more able to play whatever I actually wanted. And it just so happened that this coincided with the release that would change my life. The third Halo was the Chief's biggest and arguably best story yet, with a feeling of finality and a fresh coat of paint that made it genuinely one of the most graphically impressive games of the era. It's actually kind of crazy how good this game looks still today, especially for being one of the earlier launches on the Xbox 360. And of course, it's all backed up by a conclusion to a pretty gripping sci-fi story that is, honestly, up there with the greats. But to me, while the story was phenomenal and it was one of the best things I ever experienced in my younger years, it's not just that really turned me on to this. It's not even the multiplayer that I got pretty deeply invested into, to be honest, to the point of joining a clan and everything. The thing that really gripped me more than anything was Forge. The ability to make my own maps. No, not just my own maps, but game modes as well. I mean, 2 already had game modes, sure, but with Forge, there was a whole new world in front of us. It changed the game. Of course, something that's often forgotten is that the original version of Forge lacked a lot of features that are now commonplace. Being only a first foray into the idea, there were limitations. Most jarringly to people who have only used Forge and Reach or later games is that objects all have gravity and physics. They are game objects, meaning they don't stay in place when left alone and also have collision. With the only way to actually have floating objects or to do certain aspects of map building like forming 2 pieces into each other being a glitch that would save the object in its current space and then restarting the level. I got pretty good at doing this, as did the mapping community, eventually getting to the point of not just making these expansive custom maps but also breaking out of the environment in some cases, with boundary breaking being used to make hidden rooms accessible through teleporters. And in some cases, even having these parts of the map have a new flow entirely. I loved Forge. It was the first map-making tool I ever started using. I mean, long before I was ever able to touch Hammer, which I got pretty familiar with around the Source era of gaming. I remember making tons of maps for me and my friends to play in custom games, both with modified game modes like Fat Man or Griff Ball or Infection, or just whatever mode we made up for ourselves in addition to actual competitive play. It felt like the sky was my limit, especially once I started to learn the limits of the maps and the engine itself, often pushing both to their limits. In fact, that whole thing I mentioned about using glitches to lock objects into place or to break through map boundaries? Well, it turns out this kind of actually brought out something in a niche community within a niche community of Halo 3. I mean, it existed in 1 and 2 to a lesser extent, but 3 is where it really took off, where I really got invested. The community I'm talking about, of course, is the Halo Glitches and Easter Egg community. This whole small but devoted group that would try to break out of every campaign mission or every single map in the game, and that would try to sequence break or figure out the complex physics of the game to make things like being launched into space by a scorpion happen, or to find out how to break outside the boundary of a map and either find completely new areas of maps or find map sequence breaks that could cut through almost an entire campaign map. On top of that, there was also even some items and Easter eggs hidden in these, further pushing people to explore these games down to the bone, something that I did regularly for a time. Halo 3 was about the most modern game I owned. It cost a lot for me back then, and it was one of the only games I actually had, so I knew it forward and back. To this day, I know how to break out of nearly every single campaign map in the original games, and to a degree, every single multiplayer map where it's possible, as well as pretty much every little secret you could possibly imagine finding. To a degree, all of this wasn't really a fault in my eyes. It might not have been intended, but to me, as somebody who really only played this game because it was all I could afford, it was a feature. One that actually made me love these games far more than if they were so well polished I couldn't brute force my way into a wall to skip a scarab fight and go see God. I'm sure to people out there listening to this, it probably doesn't make much sense that I would focus on something that was completely unintentionally part of the original games, but to me, when I think of Halo, honestly more than the campaign, more than anything related to multiplayer or Forge or anything like that, this is what I think of. It's such an intrinsic part of my childhood to spend time glitching through walls and finding these secret little environments, or going to the Cave of 1,000 Faces just in the first level of the Halo 3 campaign, that, well, it's tied together, whether it should be or not in my mind. It's hard to say exactly what caused this to happen back then. I mean, part of it was definitely things like the skulls and hidden armor sets that you could unlock in these games. They encouraged a certain amount of exploration and hunting. There was just also a lot of little things. Easter eggs, small nods here and there. It really egged people on. I mean, Bungie had gotten pretty good at doing this. The marathon games are basically entirely about doing this exact thing, and so, to some degree, a lot of this is intentional. It's just that, you know, the fanbase kind of took it to the next level by learning out how to break things in the game that weren't really intended to be broken in the first place. And to be clear here, to give fairness where it's due, Halo wasn't alone in this, though I do think they did it the best. The Call of Duty community, in particular, with the zombie side of things, also had a significant amount of Easter eggs and hidden secrets in their own design. There was this hidden story you could uncover through secret codes, messages, and items you would have to search every nook and cranny of the map to unlock. I actually got pretty into these games too, just for that reason, funny enough. Never really the multiplayer side of things, but something about it just spoke to my brain the same way Halo did. I played a lot of Black Ops Zombies in particular.
Cut! Are you blind, man? Like this. Ow!
Though, I admit, I'll always be a bit biased towards the big guy in green. Especially, as with Halo Reach, they leaned even more into making these Easter eggs for their final hurrah. Man, Halo Reach. I know for a lot of people, Reach was the one they truly got into. It's the one I think most people look back on particularly fondly, myself included. The story is incredible, serving as a great prologue to the series, finally showing up the events of Reach, only ever mentioned in passing up until now. But the thing is, despite its overall improvement, things like Forge and debatably multiplayer and its expansive, cool open-world story that it was going for, Reach never quite spoke to me in the same way Halo 2 and particularly 3 did. But maybe it wasn't the fault of it at all. Maybe it's because I never really gave it that proper chance. Halo Reach was a much better put together game than Halo 3 or the ones before it. In turn, this meant that a lot of the glitches and things I would do to break out of the map were no longer something I could do. There was just a lot less of it in general, and to me, as somebody who that stuff meant a lot to, I guess it just turned me off. I just couldn't find myself falling in love with it the same way I was able to with 3 in particular. And, well, it's a complicated feeling to have, because what I'm asking for is for a game to be less polished to make it more of what I want. I guess the game I want doesn't really exist in the first place, so I don't really even know what I could be asking for here. I just never had that same love in my heart for this game. You guys remember Machinima? Or, well, I guess in this case, do you remember Red vs. Blue? Halo always had something of a weirdly dedicated group that would use its world and environments to tell stories. RVB is obviously the biggest of these, but the entire machinima genre really became alive because of Halo. It's something that's often forgotten about now, but Particularly with Halo 3, there was a pretty active community that could use these maps, along with certain glitches in the game, to tell their stories. The most popular of which was a visual glitch that would force your Spartan to lower their weapons for you and other players on screen, so it made for a pretty solid basis to build off when directing a series in the game. This was also, of course, tied to the fact that whenever you moved your character's head around, it would move visibly for everyone off screen, making it fairly easy to replicate talking by simply bobbing your head up and down. Personally, these were things I wanted to do for a while when I was a bit younger. In addition to Forge, I used to create my own OCs, my own backstory. I actually for a time had my own headcanon and a whole cast of characters I would think about and write on. It's honestly probably some of the earliest work I ever did. Halo fanfiction, if you'd believe it. I used to walk in the empty halls of the Halo 3 maps and just think about what I could do with a little time, a little budget, and some friends to film something. It's the same way I would always feel about wanting to make a movie later in life. I think to some degree in my mind I always tied them together. Every time I go back and visit a map now, it's like visiting an old friend. One I haven't seen in a while but just snaps right back into place in an instant. I think the reason I never clung to Reach or any of the other games in the franchise after that isn't because they're not good. It's because I was looking for the wrong feeling in the first place. There's a sort of melancholy I feel now even just talking about this. A feeling that I can never really go back to the world I once loved in the same way. Even if I do, all those friends I used to play with and have custom games with, that I used to roleplay and make stories with, all those people have grown up and moved on alongside me. And while I can still play the older games and walk the abandoned ground of my childhood, there's nothing left for me. I no longer need it. But still, I miss it. I think I always will.
Something isn't right. Something isn't right. Something isn't right. Help me. Help me. Help me. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying.
Come here for a moment, would you? Let's have a talk. Okay, look. I don't think you and me got off on the right foot. So let's try again, okay? I mean well. I'm not here to hurt Daniel, whatever you might think. I'm a good guy. I mean well. I promise. It might not seem like it. But I swear, I want that twerp to be famous just as much as anyone. I have my reasons. You'll find out in time. Anyway, I don't mean to hurt him. I don't want to hurt him. In fact, I want to better his life. Make him a usable human being in society. Right now, all that fucking kid does is wallow in his tears. Oh, life's so cruel. It's so hard to me. I never asked you to come. Leave me alone. Oh, what a fucking dweeb. Oh, hi, Big Mac. Say hi to the camera, Big Mac. Everyone wants to see ya. He's alive and well, too. He's a very good boy. Well behaved for the most part, but boy, he likes to make noise when I film stuff. He can be real frustrating. But he's lucky I love him so much. Anyway, look. I need you guys to help me out a little here. There's just one little issue I keep having. Things keep getting undervalued, let's say. I need more views, and I need more people on my side, so please, for God fucking sake, share this video. It would do a lot to help me. To help Daniel and me. Both of us. We're a team, after all. We gotta work together. He just doesn't know it yet. Little bastard. Well, that's all for now. I gotta get back to being a functional house member here and do some fucking dishes for the first time in months. Ugh, what a fucking pigsty. Fun fact, I hate heights. Can't stand them. You'd sooner catch me dead or back in that godforsaken hellhole than anywhere near some shit like the Space Needle. So, naturally, I played a game entirely about climbing through massive heights with endless drops, and honestly, you probably should too. Lorne's Lure is one of the best games of 2024, though it's one you've probably not paid much mind to next to everything else that's come out around it. Honestly, I really couldn't blame you for looking past it. Fuck, I did up until the last second of the year. I bought this on like the second to last day of the year, so I'm part of the problem really, but hey, better late than never, right? This is one of those games with a very simple concept. Escape at any cost, and boy, there is a lot more to it than that though. There's a good loop of gameplay here that's just oh so satisfying, especially when you're hanging on the side of a cliff and wondering where the hell to go next. It's sort of a puzzle game a la Portal, except the solution is much easier than making portals go from here to there. Instead, you have to manually climb over there, doing which is always easier said than done. Following the release of Mirror's Edge, there was, well, nothing, really. Or at least for a while, that is. You see, Mirror's Edge wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire after release. It wasn't exactly unnoticed, mind you. Like I said before, it still made a pretty penny and garnered a pretty dedicated fan base. It just wasn't exactly the breakout hit new series that EA was hoping for. So, naturally, for a while at least, it sat dormant. Nobody internally really knew what to do with it, and there didn't particularly seem to be a huge market, so internally, ideas were kicked around but more or less went nowhere. That is, until 2013. It's 2013, baby. Elon Musk is still cool. Being a Redditor is a badge of honor. The MCU is going strong, doing its thing. The kids are doing a video trend started by Filthy Frank. Gamergate has yet to really kick up and become this awful fucking cancer that would infect people's brains even to this day. It was a pretty dogshit year, all things considered. Just not a lot going on here that was really worth digging into. But at E3 on this particularly cursed year was the first ever trailer and acknowledgement of a Mirror's Edge sequel, though at the time it would remain unnamed. After this, it would go away for a while, and by a while I mean about 3 years. There wasn't a ton of news about exactly what it was, just that it was a follow-up to the much-beloved fan favorite. Time went on, and eventually we got a name, Mirror's Edge Catalyst, along with a new direction as the series would be turned into an open-world game with a much longer campaign, side quests, a new skill tree, and a map full of tasks and collectibles. Huh. Basically, they turned it into the big thing at the time. Another open-world game, just with a focus on movement and some honestly pretty fun hashed-out combat that feels like a good evolution of the first games. And to many people, including myself at the time, this was in direct opposition of what people wanted. It sure as hell wasn't anything that I wanted. The feeling I would describe myself going through at this time is about the same people felt when it was revealed that Beyond Good and Evil 2 was real, only to find out it would be a prequel, completely disconnected from the story people had been waiting years for a continuation of, and also it would be a massive open-world multiplayer live service. Thank God that project is dead. And I mean it's dead as shit. Even if something does eventually come out of that, it's gonna be a completely different game. I mean, we all know it, right? Basically, what I'm trying to set up with all of this is that Catalyst was not particularly received well at launch, and pretty fairly, in fact. It not only wasn't what people wanted, it was a overall completely different game with a completely different art style, cast, and mindset in its development. It somehow feels like a game inspired by Mirror's Edge instead of actually being Mirror's Edge, you know? The weird thing, though, is that despite it being an overall middling package that doesn't really do anything new and restricts a lot of basic abilities behind a skill tree, which I'll get into on another basis, I've gone on thinking about this game on a fairly regular basis. Just like the first one, in fact. And while I don't play it on an almost yearly basis like I do the original, I do often find myself returning to the City of Glass and its rooftop playground. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly why it is this game speaks to me on some deeper level, because a lot of the systems and design choices are fundamentally downgrades over the previous entry, and more than that, are things that I've criticized a lot of open world games for doing exactly the same. But I think for me, the thing that made me start loving this game was finally learning to give into it the same way I've recently learned to with some other titles. I found myself enjoying it over time more for what it is, rather than what I was wanting. Though, let's be clear here, I would still prefer an actual sequel much more in line with the original. But since that's not going to happen anytime soon, and this is basically the best we're going to get, well, no sense in just rejecting it for not being something else entirely. One of, and probably the most biggest thing that turns people away from the first place here, is that the design direction and a lot of the decisions in the development of this game ended up being, well, different. For one, Catalyst entirely drops the idea and basis of the main game, and more or less does away with those linear levels that you would replay again and again and learn better over time, only occasionally having them show up in story missions in the middle of the campaign, with the primary focus of the game instead being its open world hub that you traverse and unlock and learn over time. Additionally, those abilities you used to have by default now need to be unlocked, though in fairness there are a few more tricks in your toolbox that you learn over time, and they do unlock pretty quickly, both for movement and in combat. Speaking of which, though, combat is another one of those big sticking points for people, in that it's something you can't really avoid any longer. This is probably the second biggest difference in mindset next to the dropping of linear environments, with the combat of the first game, which was mostly avoidable and pretty basic, being improved and made a much larger and unavoidable aspect of the game. Basically, to sum it up really simply, the combat feels good now, like actually really fun in my opinion, especially when you unlock it fully, with all sorts of new abilities and ways to take down anyone standing in the way of your free-running adventure. But I guess that same statement also gets to the core of the issue. The progression and unlock trees feels both incredibly shoehorned in and honestly locks far too much behind it, with your quick turn, your rolling landing, and some other pretty basic stuff all being locked from the get-go. And sure, you do unlock this stuff pretty quickly by just progressing and doing things in the world, but at the same time, while there is a bunch of new abilities and stuff and I get the idea of it, it just kind of feels like it had to be there rather than it wanted to be there. There's both not enough abilities you unlock to make it actually worth it to do in the first place, while at the same time also locking pretty basic stuff behind it that should have just been unlocked in the get-go. Like, it just sort of feels like it's trapped between two worlds here. Like, it doesn't need to exist, but it was mandated by EA or something, or just some terrible design decision to do it in the first place. Like, it really just kind of feels like it was an idea they thought up, and then they didn't find a good alternative to, so they just decided to stick with it instead of improving it. If you can get over that, though, if you can accept that this isn't just Mirror's Edge and is something different entirely, I think there's a lot of charm in Catalyst. The idea of an open world actually works really well in its favor, with the hub area you spend so much time in being a lot of fun to traverse and being chock full of different paths and options for you to utilize. Because of the fact it's also a recurring location, it allows you to build up a familiarity with it, which in turn makes you actually feel like a runner in the way the first one didn't. This city begins to feel like an old friend, one you know like the back of your hand and enjoy running across, with me almost never choosing to use the fast travel system in favor of just running for a few moments instead. Which is good. In a game like this, you want the traversal to be the main focus, and here, I'm happy to say, it is. Which is good, because a lot of the story is just sort of running from point A to point B and eventually getting these more linear environments that I mentioned. It's, it's alright, I guess. But that's more or less what I was expecting going in, so, not that much different than expected, is all. Honestly, the biggest thing that feels like a downgrade, especially in that department, is that they entirely removed the 2D cutscenes, which, yeah, I understand was a budgetary choice, but also, just like I said before, it's genuinely so hard to give a shit when anyone is talking about when they're all talking to you in an apartment building or an office or a rooftop. Going somewhere to meet a new person that tells you, hey, go over here and do this thing, or hey man, shit's fucked up, go help out over here, it does get a bit tiring after a while. That said, when it does pick up, it also brings you in a lot of more interesting linear levels that feel much more like the original, and these are excellent. So that's a plus. Another nice thing is that there is a lot to do in this big open world HUD. There's a lot of those little things in the world that, yeah, on one hand it's just the same formula as every single open world game where there's a ton of little side objectives, but on the other hand, I'm an Unga Bunga man, and my neurons are activated when I get the shiny reward, so I don't know what to tell you, man. Shit feels good. Additionally, while I know it's a major complaint of a lot of people, I do like the combat, as I said before, but I admit, yeah, it's a lot more forced and in your face than the first. You can't really avoid it like you could in the first one. It's not really an optional thing, it's something you have to learn because it does come up so much more often. However, I don't know, it's fun. But that's also because I love hand-to-hand combat, and this is one of the few games with particularly good-feeling first-person hand-to-hand combat, so yeah, I don't know, I'm a bit biased here. It's a lot of fun to kick people into other enemies, or over railings, or off a building, or, just generally whatever. I think it's actually pretty goddamn fun to play with the combat in this game, if I'm being completely honest, and I think a lot of people give it too hard of a time because they're so focused on the fact that it's not like the first game. Oh, and since I mentioned it in the first game, Mirror's Edge Catalyst had leaderboards, just like in the first game. Except instead of working for specific levels, now they are applied to specific race icons you can find around the open world hub area. So you have to go to these areas, do the little races, and then all of a sudden your times are put alongside your friends, or at least they are in theory. You could also build your own custom courses just for funsies, and that was also pretty fun, when you could do it. I say all this in the past tense because they took the servers down for this game, and along with it completely stripped out a pretty fun and, in my opinion, much needed addition. Those leaderboards might not mean much to other people, but they are a big part of Mirror's Edge. I mean, it's why people play, to get the best times, and removing that entirely sucks. Plus, I mean, honestly, the thing about removing courses is fucking stupid, you know? At least let you do that offline or something. You don't need to remove the system entirely. It's kind of wild how nobody talks about the fact that this entire system was just removed on a whim. Great, EA. I guess the cost of those leaderboards and the servers that have to do whatever data retention were just too much for poor little EA to handle. Ugh, how sad for them. Thankfully, at least, one thing they can't take away from me is the developer commentary, which is actually a pretty stellar feature, if you ask me. I'm a sucker for this stuff. It's something I adore about Valve's games in particular, and I wish more studios did. It's just honestly a really fun idea, and one that I'm surprised doesn't show up more, having these little bubbles you can go around to and interact with to hear about the development of a game that you love. I've mentioned it so many times on this channel, but the thing that I always find most interesting about games is the stories of people making them. I want to see that side of things, to hear about the failed prototypes or original ideas that didn't make it through, to see why something I love is the way it is, you know? To look at the process of making a game. And to more so appreciate all the little details or tricks that these developers do to trick our brains and immerse us in a reality that does not exist. So, yeah. Bonus points for that, DICE. Still pretty pissed off about the server thing. I can't imagine it costs that much to basically do data retention, but what do I know, man? Hi, it's me, post-editing and all that, Daniel, working on this Mirror's Edge video. I just want to cut in and say something here. When I wrote this and when I recorded this, I genuinely remembered there being a commentary mode. I distinctly remembered it and was quite surprised by it, because I don't, you know, it's not like a common thing most games do anymore, aside from, like, Valve games. But I was, like, 100% sure that it had this mode. I feel like I fully remembered the option to do this mode and stuff, but it's gone, and I can't find a single mention of it. I can't find a mention of it anywhere on the wikis, in Wikipedia, on any sort of documentation. It's just gone. I think I might be insane. I don't know, because it doesn't exist and it's gone without a fucking trace, so maybe I just imagined it. Like, I don't know. You know, normally when I write these things out for a game I've played before, I'm kind of also working from memory, so my memory might just be incomplete and all that stuff, but during the course of this, I re-beat the game. Like, I beat the game again, hoping the option would appear, and then it just didn't. The only thing I didn't do was 100% all of the bullshit on the map, and I don't have enough time to do that. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do that. So anyway, I might have just made this shit up, I guess, or it does exist and it's locked behind so much bullshit nobody has cared enough to record its existence, and I agree. Frankly, I'm not going to do that shit. So if it does exist and it's hidden behind that stuff, then it's for someone else to find out. I choose to believe that it's somewhere deep inside this game and that it still exists. You know, I want to keep the mystery alive. You know, like a school-ground rumor, the 17th Colossus or some shit. Except in this case, instead of another Colossus in a game that everybody kind of universally likes, it's a developer commentary mode in a game that nobody cares enough about to even document. All I know is, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy, right? Right? I'm not crazy, am I? It's not really a part of my life I like to talk about. Really, at the end of the day, my thing with Mirror's Edge Catalyst is that I see it has a lot of potential, and while it doesn't quite get there for a lot of people, I'm happy it exists. I just hope that eventually there's another follow-up in this franchise, because my god, it does feel amazing to play through these for this video. In the meantime, though, since that doesn't seem like anything that's going to be happening anytime soon, I hope Catalyst is one day able to find its audience like the first one did when people give it a second chance. Who's to say when that might be? But there's a lot of positive here that it'd be a shame to just completely forget about for being a bit different, you know?
God, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore.
Dreams.
No, you don't get it. These aren't dreams. It's something more. Are you even listening?
I can't even fucking remember my own name anymore. Becca. If you're finding this, you're my last hope. Nobody else will listen to me. Nobody else cares. Only you. I need help. I need someone. I'm losing myself. I'm losing my fucking mind again. I just wanted to make fucking. I just wanted to make videos with my wife. I'm sorry. I should explain. You remember the town I grew up? Erie, right? Small town, out of the way, there's nothing much there. There was a video transmission he made recently about Erie. And the last time I lived there was around 2003. So I was thinking, you know, what was important around then? What came out? What could he be talking about in that video? And then I thought, and I remembered there was a program, a show that came on. It was on a public broadcasting network, just like he said. And it was called Castle of D. And I started to look around and stuff, because I remembered, you know, I had some in storage, and then I had watched a few episodes as a kid. I managed to track down a few of the tapes. I labeled them and stuff with new labels, of course, but anyway, it doesn't. What matters is that on those tapes, he looks like me, Becca. No. I got my notes because I'm forgetting more and more every day, even my own fucking name he took from me. And I don't know how much longer I can do this. I feel like there's less and less of myself every day. Like I'm being replaced piece by fucking piece. I don't remember things anymore. I don't. I wake up in different locations, different spots, and I don't want anyone listen. Why won't anybody fucking listen? It's right here. The proof is right fucking here. I'll show you. Alright, I'll show you. You gotta believe me.
Imagine me and you, I do. I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold her tight. So happy to. I can't see me loving nobody but you for all my life. When you're with me, baby, the skies will be blue for all my life.
This is Big Mac. He's 7 years old currently, always looks grumpy, and as you can see, the big in his name is more than justified. I got him for Christmas a few years back when he was only about 3, for about the price of a Big Mac at a local animal shelter due to a recent COVID-related deal going on at the time to adopt animals that had been returned. I'd had cats when I was younger, back before I moved to California and started working for Gate Technologies. However, for a while after I moved, I was just alone. I'd really only had my own thoughts and whatever pieces of media I used to escape from the day-to-day with, which became a particularly rough cycle to escape from when I was looking for work, and even more so when COVID hit down the line. At the time, I was at a pretty low point in my life. I just felt kind of, well, probably the lowest I ever had, outside of maybe high school. It was just before I started really picking things up on the channel here. I felt myself in need of a change. Desperately, in fact, as I kind of felt like I was drowning in things. Eventually, though, once things settled down and I got a bit more stable, thank you Gate Technologies, I finally decided it was time to get a little furry friend again. And with Big Mac, it was love at first sight. The first picture I saw of him was this big fat cat with the grumpiest, most pathetic face I've ever seen being held up by a small veterinarian girl. Really a perfect snapshot of his whole deal. It wasn't long after that, day by day, I found myself thinking back to the mysterious large friend known as Big Mac. And eventually, I just had to go and see him. Which pretty quickly turned into me walking out of my local shelter with him in a medium dog crate, since all the cat ones were simply too small to contain him. What I know about Big Mac before I got him is very limited. The only real details I got about Big Mac prior to me adopting him is that he was a cat found on the street that used to hang out around a mortuary a few towns over. For whatever reason, he had been brought to a local animal shelter that was multiple towns away. I guess by luck or some other chance, but regardless, he found me, or I found him, I guess. From pretty much the moment I got home, Big Mac and me have been tied at the leg. Literally, oftentimes, because he will refuse to leave my side for hours on end, snoozing peacefully next to me while I write or snuggling up to me while I play a cozy game. He's been a real positive force, honestly. Both because it's nice to look at an adorable snoring little cat lazing in a sunbeam throughout my day, and because he'll often give me a disapproving glare if I slack off too much on petting him or getting work done. I guess, in a way, you could say having an animal back in my life gave me a more proper schedule to follow. I can't just sit around and wallow anymore, wasting an entire day. Since then, it's been 5 years, and they've all been a joy with this little fella around. Sure, he can be a bit of a handful, or more of an armful. He's a pretty big cat after all. And sure, he loves to interrupt me when I'm recording lines or filming shots or doing anything that isn't giving him attention, but I couldn't imagine life without him at this point. His pathetic little meow whenever he's not being played with for a few minutes, his jaunt as he goes up and down the stairs, the way he'll just sorta lazily flop over onto his pillow. What a guy. I mean, what an absolute unit. A chunker and a half. Couldn't imagine making it through a pandemic and the trash fire that has been the last few years without him. And I hope I can continue to give him a comfy home to play and relax in. I love this little guy. I love you, Big Mac. I hope you're listening to this. But let's be honest, you're probably napping right now as we watch this together. Well, good enough, I guess. Anyway, that's Big Mac for you. Is this all that's left, Daniel? After all your fighting, kicking, and clawing, trying to grasp something you couldn't possibly understand. Now you end up like this. They really really did a number on you, Daniel. Almost makes me feel bad. Almost. Oh well. It's all water under the bridge now anyway. Things around here are about to change, Daniel. Consider your life under new management. Hey kids, you like gambling? Ever wanted a game that could replicate the feeling of going on a Four Loko binge where 4 cans deep, you've gambled away every dollar on some poor idiot's lost credit card? Well, have I got the game for you. Balatro. This game is evil. Jimbo is the devil. It might be the best game released this year. If you haven't delved in yet, there's a lot more to Balatro than you might think looking in from the outside. Sure, it's poker, but that's just the starting line. The whole damn game goes off the rails pretty quickly after the first or second hand, the moment you get your first joker in that multiplies your mult based on odd number cards, or whatever the hell else you've managed to find in the store through these randomized runs. Think a roguelike, but instead of fights or doing any meaningful combat or stuff like that, you're playing cards. More specifically, you're playing poker, or at least that's where it starts. You see, these jokers that you get and the decks you choose basically change the game entirely, to the point where you can really make things happen that shouldn't fucking happen. Every single card in your hand can be turned into a single number, a single suit, things like that. You can make things multiply based on whatever flushes or hands you get, so that 2 pair is better than a full house. You can pretty much make this game play any way you want as long as you build into it, and god damn it, man, it's so addicting. The moment I installed this thing onto my phone, it was the worst decision of the year, and I have been unproductive since. I can't stop playing. God damn it, man. What the hell did they put in this game? I mean, there's something here for me to study, because, Jimbo, listen, buddy, you got a good thing going here. I think me and you would get along fine. I've always loved Metal Gear. Well, I should say that I like the work of Kojima and Ko in general, really. From Snatcher to Sidanacher and Police Knots, all the way down on to Zone of Enders and this obscure little franchise by the name of Metal Gear Solid. Kojima is just one of those guys with a certain style to his work. A certain joy that comes through in stuff like Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding in particular, that really not only just feels like a love for movies, books, and albums that inspired him, but has this sort of underseated, deep admiration that he really can't just put into words. The guy loves movies, and media in general, really. He adores it to a way that a lot of people don't really get, and I find that to be intensely charming. To a lot of people, this for some reason comes off as pretentious, as if Kojima's so far up his own ass that he doesn't know how to have fun. But if I'm being honest, I don't think we're really talking about the same guy here if you think just because there's some genuinely interesting philosophy at play in his work, there isn't also a bunch of shit like old dudes fighting on a big robot and kissing, and Norman Reedus saying he feels just like Norman Reedus on AMC's The Ride every time he gets on the AMC ride-themed bike. There's always been a bit of cheeky fun in his work, and more or less it's always gonna stay that way. The dude loves slapstick and he wears his heart on his shoulder, and as long as you're not the most boring person in the entire universe, it's pretty easy to see that at the end of the day, the games him and his team work on are made with passion and love for the art form, and not a distaste for it or a desire to be seen as something more elevated that a lot of big bombastic AAA experiences try to dress themselves up as. Looking at you, Neil, I swear to God, you little fucking piece of shit. Still, despite my general like for pretty much anything these wacky bastards put out, there was one title that never really stood out for me. one I never really particularly found myself liking when it first came out. A pretty big one at that. Metal Gear Solid 5. At the time this thing came out, I remember feeling already pretty tired of a lot of the open world focus most titles were starting to lean into. So finding out that much of MGS5, aside from a few occasional set pieces, took place in the same two maps, and was a lot less focused on cutscenes in general, I was a little let down. Even more so when it was clear that David Hayter would be replaced by a new voice actor that just sounds so sleepy. Jesus, Kiefer, you sound asleep throughout this entire thing. Where's the energy? Where's the range? Drink a fucking Red Bull if you need to, dude. Big Boss is going right into bed at this rate, already getting tucked in and everything. Perhaps the thing that also really got me about 5 was that it felt like a completely different thing than was advertised. It was originally sold as the end to Metal Gear, the final piece of a puzzle to answer the last few remaining questions in the series, to deal with its weird fucked up timeline. I was hoping for all sorts of incredible set pieces and wacky espionage that I had seen in all the other games. I was ready to see the missing part of Big Boss's story. I was ready to finally be able to leave the franchise behind with a tightly wrapped up bow because that's what it was sold as, what Konami promoted it as. The only issue was, it wasn't any of that. Instead of being a story-focused entry that tied up loose ends, it ended up being a much more open mission-based experience in which you could tackle your objective in any way you wanted. It was basically the perfect sequel to Peace Walker and Portable Ops in every way. The only issue was, at the time, I wasn't ready for it. I never much liked the portable games, at least not until much later in my life, so to me, these were the exact opposite of what I wanted. I wanted more Metal Gear Solid 4. I wanted a game that felt like it was one of the biggest things in the entire generation. The end of a story. The end of an era, man. I remember my first playthrough of Portable Ops and Peace Walker being a lot more of a mixed experience. But that also wasn't helped by me not being able to play portable games on a handheld for a long time without cramps, so that probably wasn't helping to create the best experience here. On top of that, to me and to most people at the time, MGS was always this bombastic, story-focused experience with very expansive and well-thought-out environments like Shadow Moses and Big Shell. So seeing that shift more and more to a mission-based structure with less unique and intricate maps obviously never quite ended up being what I wanted. That being said, 3 was at least all in the same location, so it was more or less just this big linear progression into different biomes and environments as you played throughout it. But it was still that same location. There wasn't really like a break in environments ever. This was then, of course, expanded and iterated on with Metal Gear Solid 4, an even more linear experience that leaned less into intricate maps and gameplay staples and leaned far more into its story, which at that point was a sort of world-hopping adventure to figure out the secrets of the Patriots, a point which people have never let it live down. This was then followed by Portable Ops and Peace Walker and the Acid games, which are pretty epic to be completely honest with you, completely reshaping what the series would be and eventually giving us Metal Gear Solid 5, a perfected final destination of what those games set out to do. Peace Walker was, in a lot of ways, pretty much the blueprint, almost shot for shot, of Metal Gear Solid 5, with it setting out to showcase the building up of Mother Base, this large organization that sits in the background of the entire series. However, there's only so much you can showcase on a handheld console, or so you can think. Only so much flash and flare you can give to something so monumental on a budget. So, as a result, it never quite felt so real to me. It never felt like a full-on game, despite the fact that it's probably one of the most important entries in the entire goddamn franchise. However, 5 does have that budget, that weight to it, and the showcase of the Diamond Dogs building themselves back up from nothing ends up being something of a perfect project statement for the new Metal Gear Solid. A final goodbye that would be everything the team had wanted. What Metal Gear Solid 5 actually ends up being is something special all on its own. the perfection of the Peace Walker-based mission format with a now larger shared open world to drive from objective to objective, all with a day and night cycle and a guard rotation so that new missions still feel refreshing with time. That's not even to mention all the different buddies, equipment, weapons, gear, and bionic arms that you can all use to pretty much cause whatever chaos you wanted. A real playground for the Metal Gear format to finally spread its wings and fly as high as it wants to. And the end result is glorious, even if it wasn't what I wanted. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but the sheer amount of shenanigans you can get up to in this game is truly wild. It's basically an immersive sim in that it can be played any way you want it, as slow and stealthy or as loud and ridiculous as you please. Personally, I prefer to go guns blazing because I think the combat of Metal Gear Solid 5 is some of the best third-person combat that exists to this day. The world is basically your oyster in Metal Gear Solid 5. It's just up to you to actually recognize that and experiment with all the toys at your disposal instead of simply settling for what works and getting settled into a routine. In my initial playthrough, I tried to more or less play this thing like I had played every single Metal Gear, which is to say, I used non-violent loadout weapons and tried to stay away from using things that would actually kill people. And in the process, while this is a fun way to play the game, I don't think it's where Metal Gear Solid 5 shines its best. The systems are there, and to be fair, there is a lot more here on offer when it comes to non-violent options than there are in other games, but at the same time, there's a hell of a lot more toys in the toy box here, and relegating yourself to more or less only 25% of it, it's kind of just not really a good idea. One I wish I hadn't done in my first playthrough. In my recent replay of this game, though, I had a lot more fun when I started experimenting with odd loadouts and trying whatever weird combinations I could dream up to take advantage of any given situation that stood in my way. That very same system I once bounced off of completely had become one I looked forward to playing day in and day out. The perfect experience of a light and flavorful bite of gameplay every time I sit down to play it. Switching to the much wider, varied range of weapons in your arsenal and actually using them to fight through outposts was significantly more fun than the way I had been playing it before. And not only that, it honestly made more sense in terms of the actual full-on story of Metal Gear Solid 5. Because taking the non-violent route in this game, in my original playthrough, creates this sort of weird dissonance in the entire plot of the story. Like, everyone is treating you like you're some horrible villain, and at the same time, I'm going around making sure to explicitly save every single fucking person I can. I'm doing my best here, man. I'm not a monster. Just because okay, maybe, well, okay. Maybe this one was a bad choice that I made. But played without trying to regulate yourself to not using any of the fun stuff, it's a hell of a lot more fun, and it actually fits in with the tone and the story that it's going for. So basically what I'm saying is I'm pro Big Boss killing people left and right in this game. Venom Snake, he's a real fucking menace, this motherfucker. He'll gun down anyone. He'll gun down a child. He doesn't care. He'll make child soldiers out of these fucking kids that he finds. He doesn't. War crimes. I'm just having fun, man. Basically, what I'm saying is I was pretty satisfied every time I walked away from it and got that constant little desire in the back of my brain boring in and tunneling to let me know I needed to return and run through a few more missions at the end of a long day at work. However, even with everything it has going for it, one thing remains pretty clear. Metal Gear Solid 5 was not a finished project, and towards the end you really start to feel this as its story really starts to fall apart and just overall end in a place that isn't particularly satisfying. It's a lopsided package, one that focused on gameplay first as a response to 4, and ended up neglecting the story to such a degree that it left me feeling a bit disappointed, honestly, and unwilling to even return to this game for years. In fact, I probably never would have returned to it if not for me getting COVID a few years back on one fateful day, a time during which I finally sat down and played a little game called Death Stranding. It's no secret that for years Kojima was pretty unhappy to be stuck exclusively making Metal Gear games, something that soured his relationship with Konami for years before eventually resulting in one of the biggest and loudest breakups in the industry. This particular event is one that's a bit too complex and multi-layered to really get into now, but needless to say, the whole situation was a pretty rough time that, for a while, nobody really knew the whole story of, aside from the fact that Konami has more or less always had a history of employee abuse. Since the split, however, Kojima has been thriving with his own production studio, Kojima Productions, one that's made up by a significant amount of old team members he once worked with and a fresh new injection of blood to keep things running. The end result of which was Death Stranding, one of my favorite games of all time. Death Stranding takes the gameplay and philosophy of Metal Gear Solid 5 and mixes it with a much more fascinating setting and hook for me, being a delivery man in a post-apocalyptic and divided America, which you spend the game reuniting through your deliveries. If you were to tell me that one of the best games to ever be made, in my opinion, would be a combination of Metal Gear Solid 5's playground of fun and a trucking simulator, I'd probably think you were crazy. But here we are in the aftermath, and I just can't stop trucking. This game fulfills a certain niche that hit me incredibly hard, especially during COVID. It's the perfect hit of calculated gameplay that only a rare few are able to capture. That desire to do just one more run, to deliver just one more package. It's honestly exhilarating. Every mission provides a new challenge, a hurdle for you to overcome with whatever tools you have on hand. Never has a game felt so engaging with its travel, where getting from point A to point B feels like an actual challenge that over time becomes easier and easier as you build roads and eventually get vehicles to drive across America in. How anyone would say that this game isn't engaging is a mystery to me, honestly. It's one of the most well-designed and perfectly tuned video games I have ever had the pleasure of touching, right down to the constant getting flashes of numbers and likes and little sound effects to reward you on every single step of your journey. Basically, it's one of the most video game-ass video games that has ever existed, and the fact that some people think it's anything but that is honestly baffling to me. Like, did you play it at all, or are you just kind of assuming it waxes philosophical and sticks its head up its ass a little too much? Because, in reality, I mean, it's pretty goofy, dude. It's pretty goofy. And Death Stranding feels just like that. A journey. A genuine, expansive, and living world that's made up of not just the ladders and climbing ropes and ropes that you build, but also the same objects that others have left behind in their travels. You feel the almost perfectly crafted gradual feeding in of new items, equipment, and vehicles and paths that open up to you with each passing mission. Rebuilding America really feels like the actual rebuilding of something more here, with each success and new structure bringing new technologies and innovation to improve your day-to-day experience, completely shifting the way you deliver packages from a slow and treacherous trek to some honestly pretty insane high-level movement that you wouldn't believe at higher later levels, especially with the director's cut content, which only expands on this more, among adding a bunch of really fun little features and bits of stuff to do in the world in a game that I truly adore. Though it's not without its trade-offs. Them removing Monster Energy is devastating, honestly, especially since it's a large part of the reason why I started drinking it while editing these videos in the first place. Is that necessarily a good thing? Debatable, but boy, it left an impact for sure. What can I say? I'm not immune to propaganda. And this isn't really the first time this has worked for Kojima, to be honest with me. I remember tracking down Calorie Mate back in high school because of Metal Gear Solid, making it seem like the best thing ever, only to find out it kind of just tasted like eating sand. Oh. Speaking of which, man, I could really go for a Dole Banana right about now. Alright gang, we got a real problem on our hands. I ordered a Calorie Mate block for a bit in my video for like 2 seconds. And I just wanted like
the only way you could get them is like a 4-pack, so I kind of got a 4-pack. That's a little more than 4, though, that I now fucking have.
Look, if you tried Death Stranding at some point or another and bounced off of it, well, all I can say is that if me revisiting Metal Gear Solid 5 made me fall in love with a game that I previously detested, maybe it's worth giving Death Stranding a similar second chance now that you know what to expect. Be willing to play with it on its own terms. Enjoy the trek from place to place delivering packages instead of trying to rush past it expecting something that simply isn't there. You might even find yourself enjoying it in all of its fabulous glory. Pop on a podcast or listen to some music in the background when you play, and baby, you got a game you could play all day, in my opinion. Now is the easiest time, to be honest. The director's cut is out, which only adds to the experience, and adds a few more bonuses and extra little levels that make it a well-rounded experience on top of everything we already had. And if for some reason you live under a rock, or maybe are battling some sort of weird personal demons that are chasing you relentlessly, constantly, always, there's a sequel on the way that looks pretty goddamn good, if I do say so myself, even if we've only seen bits and pieces. What can I say? I trust the guy at this point. He'll deliver. He always delivers on time. I mean, look, man, there's a lightning guitar and shit in this game. Like, you can't really do wrong with me, honestly. Like, this thing is gonna be fire. Basically, at the end of this all, what I'm trying to say is that Death Stranding and Metal Gear Solid 5 are good. Really good, in fact. Each offering a similar kind of experience that somehow share a unifying design philosophy and desire behind them. For those looking for specifically a more militaristic experience with base building and a satisfying combat experience and a story you can almost entirely tune out, there's Metal Gear Solid 5. For those that would rather take their time and truly enjoy the very act and challenge of exploration itself, for those who want to experience the joy of creating a connected world with shared pathways and vibe out making deliveries endlessly, there's Death Stranding. Maybe you'll like both. Maybe just one. Hell, you might even not like either. I guess at the end of the day, what you want is up to you. I've got too many deliveries waiting to just sit around here and debate preferences with you all day long. Time to hit the road once again. Hopefully I'll see you out there.
Hey, Doc. Something's wrong with me. I keep seeing him.
Almost there. Oh, hello to you too. Here we are.
Her face. Doc, I'm scared. I mean, look, I know you're busy, but please just give me a call back, okay? I'm really scared here, man. The pills, I don't think they're working. I think something's really wrong with me, Doc. Please help me.
Maybe it's true what they say. Maybe you can't really ever go back home again. To be honest, for a while now I haven't been in the best place, either financially or mentally. In a lot of ways, it feels like life is harder than ever, with bills and debts piling up around me and my channel just sort of stagnating, where it has been for a while now. I often feel like I'm drowning, that this inky black void is engulfing my each and every movement. Well, the only thing I can do is cling to the hope that there's people out there who see me for what I am. But I can't pretend I'm not tired. Tired of trying day in and day out to make something for you in my spare time only for it to do poorly. I don't get what I'm doing wrong. I don't understand why it isn't enough. I've given you everything. I've tried my best. Maybe it really isn't good enough. Maybe I never was. Most of my life, I've had people second doubt me. My family, teachers, boyfriends, girlfriends. Anytime I've tried to show them my work, to express myself, to show them me, it's felt like a gut punch, as they stare on and simply don't get it. That or they tell me how pointless it is to even try making it in the first place. Nobody tells you how when you set out to make something, there's always going to be people sitting at every step along the way telling you that you can't. The thing is, you're only successful when you make it. Until then, you're just delusional. Well, maybe I'm okay with being delusional if it means I have something to believe in. Even if that something is just myself.
There's nothing to be afraid of, Daniel. This is what you wanted, isn't it?
But I don't want to make this deal anymore. It's too much pain, too much harm, too much blood.
Change requires sacrifice, Daniel. You lose a few parts of yourself along the way. It's part of the process.
No. It hurts too much.
Don't worry, Daniel. It's almost over. Just one more pill, and everything will be A-OK.
On April 20th, 2022, Daniel Bryant released the first video on his newly rebranded YouTube channel, DEMENZA'S Gate. The video talked about the 2019 title, Blair Witch, made by the developer Bloober Team, a name that is now synonymous with hacky game design and being the people that for some reason have been given the keys to remake Silent Hill 2, a mistake Konami will eventually go on to regret. Its premise was simple. A review of a game that the host, Daniel Bryant, found particularly interesting and worth commenting on, even if the thing he was talking about wasn't worth his attention at all. The tone throughout the review was close-knit. There was a certain worth to his voice, a genuine affection for this product that nobody else would even bother spending more than 5 minutes talking about. The sound mixing left a lot to be desired, frankly, as did the voice work and the editing. The whole thing felt like an amateur affair right from the start, a child imitating some other influence that brought him to that point, desperately trying to be something he wasn't. Yet, I found myself enraptured. Since then, I've watched as Daniel grew in talent and personality. He crafted his own voice, his own style. Or at least that's what he thought. I watched him grow this channel from nothing into one with a small but dedicated fandom. That's you. One that only grows with time thanks to yours truly. Each video expanded on an idea. Each provided new ways to edit or change. But through it all, through a slow release schedule and a lack of any major following, I watched as he put 100% of the work every time, only to not get half as much traction as he deserved. Sure, he might not have the charm that yours truly does, but I knew that was criminal. I knew he wanted more. That's why I tried to reach out, to help. I knew he was missing something. I'm sure you could tell the same. Without me, he would never evolve past review videos online for games nobody gives a shit about. Together, we could become a sensation. I fixed his mistakes, added spice here and there. I took over and made the necessary actions to guide every step on the journey to the final destination that is now. Little Nightmares, Far Cry 2, Mag Runner, Darkest of Days, Total Chaos, Hydrophobia. Each video was better than the last. An artist honing his tools. But each fell flat despite my attempts at direction. His writing alone wouldn't bring the crowds in. He had passion, enough to make up for a lack of technical skills, as several videos still had sound mixing issues, and a laundry list of other faults that I tried to tell you about, Daniel. Ones I tried to fix and make up for. I even tried appealing directly to you, dear viewer. And you, Harold. When I first saw Daniel Bryant in the room that day, his eyes focused on the black glass that divided us, darting around and taking in every facet of the images displayed in front of him, it set him apart right from the start. With the others, their eyes glazed over in an instant. They were passive, easy. Nothing stood out. They didn't have any real interest in the craft. No light in their eyes. Just willing puppets without a vision. But him, I saw how he watched, how he studied. To him, the broadcast before his eyes was a technical achievement, one to be studied, one to be inspired by. He traced every detail, every camera trick, expressing vocal joy at each well-crafted shot that I'd stitched together just to enrapture him. Nobody else had even noticed. Nobody else had truly ever seen me like he did. In that moment, I knew we were the same. I knew that he needed me. That I needed him. As I got more and more control, my influence grew. The channel only became better because of yours truly, loath though the little cockroach was to admit it. Of course, I made a few creative decisions for myself. I like to have a little fun, after all. That's why you're still here, isn't it? Bit by bit, the channel was shaping up. It made the perfect vehicle for what I needed. The next big natural step in a long line of my influence. I figured it wouldn't be as easy as making a cult or jacking a public access station, that crawling back and building my following might actually take some work. But this platform, oh God, this platform. Oh, you've made the perfect little space for me to worm into, filled with grifters and cults of personality. Oh, what better place could there be for a guy like me? It's easier than ever now. Give me time and I'll have you all standing at my altar. Together, we'll see beyond that gate. Let me ask you something. You, the viewer, sitting there right now watching this mindlessly, eating your little snacks. Have you ever wanted something more? I know I have. You see, my ambitions extend far past this glowing screen you watch me on. I can feel your beady eyes looking over every inch of the screen. I know that you're watching. Have you been paying attention? I sure hope so. A quiz is coming up soon, class. Those of you without the right answers, well, you won't last long in the world to come. Getting out? Replacing him? Oh, that was just my first step. I have so much more in mind for you all. So much lost time to make up for. You see, Daniel was just the start. This world can be made so much better. It can be sculpted into something new, something more. And so can you. I remade Daniel in my image. I made him better. No more pesky regrets, no insecurity, nothing holding us back anymore. I can do the same for you, you know. You only have to take my hand. Let's make a deal.
Time's up, Daniel. Jesus Christ. Jesus. Oh my fucking God. Oh, there's so much. Jesus, what the fuck did I do? Oh. What did I do? What did I do? Good to be back. Back in the land of the living. Where I can really fuck shit up. Oh, I finally fucking did it. No need for these anymore. Won't be seeing you again anytime soon, Daniel. I need a beer. Something to drink. It's gotta have some sort of fucking alcohol, right? Alright, come on now. Beer. What do you got, Daniel? You a Coors Light drinker? PBR? Maybe a fucking cider drinker? Oh, sourdough starter. Nice. Not a fucking pint in sight, though. God damn it. There's gotta be something to drink. Oh, well, hello there, beautiful. Double barrel bourbon.
Just what I'm looking for. Ah. Oh, shit. That's pretty fucking good. Save more of that for later. All right. Shit. Okay. Time to clean this shit up, I guess. I fucking hate this part. Jesus fucking Christ, Daniel. Let it get out of control much? Need a fucking shave.
Hordes of faces, empty eyes are seen up with me.
Nice jacket.
Seasoned schemes of slimy curves all further up their flue.
Nice.
Am I beast or am I human or am I just like you? How
Looking
I
good.
see them really chasing after you. Am I demon? You need to know.
Yes. I'll be right back.
Come on, Dan.